life gets more expensive.
Inflation, yeah.
Inflation's real, and
Mhm.
people think it doesn't affect them, but it does. So I'm like,
Directly.
I'm like, you know what? Whatever my number is, I'm gonna times it by four. And that's the goal. That's really the goal because I think once I have 20 million worth of assets, then I don't have to think about money again. Like it's no longer a problem. And that's where I want to be. And it's not just for my own consumption. Like I'm not just here like, oh, I just want to buy. Because like once you start becoming an investor, you realize you want to buy less stuff, actually.
Mhm.
Hey, and welcome back to Pathways, the podcast where we talk with West Indians who are out here at home or in the diaspora, making work for them. These are the folks who are out there charting their own path, figuring things out in a non-traditional field or just in an uncommon way. If you're looking for some inspiration on where to take things in your own career, or you just like hearing about what others are doing and how they've gotten to where they are, then stick around. You can be a fly on the wall of my conversation with them. And maybe you'll take something away to use in your own life. When you're done, leave a comment and let us know what you liked or what you want to hear more of. And now, let's get into the episode.
My guest for today's episode is Andre Glean. Now, Andre is a Grenadian-Canadian civil engineer with a robust professional career. He started his educational journey here in Grenada, where he attended primary school, secondary school, and community college before moving to Canada. There, Andre earned a college diploma in civil engineering, then worked for a year, and then completed his civil engineering degree at Lakehead University. Andre now works for the largest engineering consulting firm in Canada, showcasing his expertise in the field. Alongside his engineering career, he's also a dedicated long-term investor who is passionate about simplifying the stock market. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Hey, Andre, and welcome to Pathways.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Arlene.
Thanks for being here. I'm looking forward to this discussion today because you've been involved in the show in different ways, and this is the first time that you'll actually be the guest.
Yes, and it's quite an honor, to be honest. Like I said, I was excited and very humbled and appreciative of the fact that you even asked me to be a speaker today or a guest.
Oh, of course. You're doing big things.
Trying.
All right. So to get started, we're just going to kind of introduce you to the listeners, those who don't know you. And so I'm just going to ask you a few questions to kind of paint that picture for them. So tell us the very basics. Where did you grow up, little Andre?
So I grew up in Palmas in St. John's in Grenada. Grew up there from what I can remember, I think like 1 year till 18. Went to St. Mary's Junior School. Then I went on to PBC, then TAM-CC, and then I left Grenada to continue my secondary education, where I went to Seneca College, Lakehead University, and now I work for a consulting firm in Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Okay, nice. You just answered like all my questions in one. I love it.
I'm gonna dive deep. And get and expound on a few of the other things. But essentially, like just growing up in Grenada is a blessing, as you would know. And just being, because I was born in Canada. A lot of people don't know that I was born in Canada, but I grew up in the island of Grenada. So when I was younger, I didn't really appreciate Grenada for what it truly was. And then when I moved to Canada is when I truly appreciated Grenada a lot more. So a lot of the culture, my upbringing is just based off, just being around Grenadians and having that determination to get more in life.
Nice. Okay. So as you were growing up in Palmas, did you have an idea even back then of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
So, I feel like typically I used to repeat that, I want to be an engineer like my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Be mindful at that time, I didn't know what an engineer really was. So what they did, I really didn't have any clue, but I always used to say that. So when I was in Form 5, one of the biggest things, you're trying to figure out what career you want to get into. You're 15, 16 years old and you're trying to figure out, okay, where do I want to go? And engineering was still top of the list. I had pilot second. I also was interested in being a pilot. But then I just started researching, like, I'm like, what's my biggest motivation? What's the biggest factor? And it was money. I'm just being honest. Like, I couldn't think of any other thing that could make me, I didn't have any experience in any other field to make me feel like, okay, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I started Googling the top paying jobs, and engineer was one of the top few. So it's funny because when I first left Grenada, I went to Ryerson University and I was doing computer engineering my first year, and I did my first programming course and I hated it. Absolutely hated it. And then that's when I realized, like, yeah, computer engineer is not for me. So I actually dropped out of Ryerson. And that summer, I worked at a Jamaican restaurant downtown Toronto. And, I was working there, and a few things happened while I was working there. For instance, I was helping clean up the back alley of the restaurant. And then, like, the manager accidentally swept like garbage onto my face. And I remember going into the washroom and I was like, this is not for me. Like, I need more in life. I understand people who could do these jobs, but this job did not fit my soul. I knew for a fact. So it was from there I started doing a bit more research. My dad helped me out. And then I went the college route. And the college route, in my personal opinion, was the best thing that I could have done for my career, because it's more hands-on experience. It's more things related to what's actually happening in the field. And it gave me a better understanding as to what I want to be. So from that, I went from a civil technology diploma in college, and then I transferred out later on to university to get my engineering degree in civil engineering.
So I have a few questions here.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you were working at this Jamaican restaurant.
Yeah.
What was the plan for you? So I'm going to assume, tell me if I'm wrong, that like college was initially the goal when you left here. When I
left Grenada, like, how every Grenadian tells you go to university. You need a university degree. So when I left, I went straight to university. But a couple of things. I wasn't mature enough at that time.
How old were you, just for reference?
I would have been 17, and I would have turned 18 when I started university.
Okay.
So just full transparency, I was not like an A+ student. Like, I've never been an A+ student. I never thought the school setting was for me. I just did enough to get by. That was just my main goal, because I was more into sports and doing different things. And I just did more to did enough just to get by. So in PBC, I would say, I don't even think I got in the top 10 in class, to be honest with you. But I did enough. I made sure I got all my subjects. I worked just so that I could get through. So when it was university time, when going into Ryerson, I had that mentality. I'm like, I could just do the bare minimum and get through. And that wasn't the case. I was really awakened when they were like, when I saw the amount of coursework I got to study for my midterm the night before, I'm like, bro, this is not happening. So that was a rough period in my time, because that's when I started to realize, like, I didn't know what I wanted to do at that point. I thought I wanted to get into engineering. I thought I wanted to do computer. I didn't like programming. So after my first university year, I got a job. My brother's friend actually was a manager. And so he hired me. And this was my first job ever. I'd never worked before that. So while I was working, yep.
Just to get the mindset, at that point, you left school. Did you have a next plan? Like, was this job kind of your entry into adult life? Did you think you were just going to make money and then go back to school? What was going on?
I did not have a plan. So I'll be honest with you, this job was for me to help pay rent. Yeah. So I didn't have any income. I didn't have any funds. I still had to pay rent. So this job was just, hey, okay, let's work for the summer. Let's try to figure things out. Like, I was looking at the Air Force. Because I didn't feel like I had enough discipline to be able to achieve my goals at that time. Mm-hmm. So when I started working, and then I started realizing, like, I had that job. I started working part-time at Foot Locker. And I'm just like, I need more for myself. Like this minimum wage thing, it ain't gonna work. Like I'm working all these hours and I'm barely making money. I'm like, this is not for me. But what I didn't know is that math was my strong point growing up. So in regardless of which part of schooling I was at, I know math was my strongest part. So I know it still had to be around the engineering field that I was more interested in. So my dad was just like, hey, how about you take a look at this college, which was Seneca College. And even then, when I started it, my first year, it wasn't bad. I just didn't like it. But what changed for me was when I got into the college co-op program. And that is when they give you exposure to the real life, as in like, okay, if you were to get a job, this is what you'd be doing. And when I was going through that process, my main priority is to apply to the positions that I want. I'm not just going to apply to any and everything because there's a lot of things there. I'm like, I'm going to only apply to the things that I want. I'm going to work hard to make sure I get into it. So I was fortunate enough to crush my interviews. I got my first job was with the municipality within Toronto. So York Region is one of the biggest municipalities there. And that's when I started to realize like I might have been a school baby, but a real life genius is where I felt like, okay, this is where I'm at. Like the real world experience is where it really gets me going. It makes me start to understand and learn things more. And I feel like some people don't take into aspect that like, hey, some of us learn well in school, but some of us learn well like hands-on. Like you have to be, I'm a visual learner. And that's when I started realizing that about myself. Because I was never put into that position before where I was working for a company and they're telling me what we're doing or why we're doing it. And that is when the ball started rolling. I'm like, okay, so I think I could do this.
Nice. Okay. So this is opening up like a lot of different thoughts.
Let's go.
Okay, so you started your co-op. For reference, because I'm also curious. Do those co-op opportunities at university pay? So like paid internship? Okay.
Yeah. So, and that was the beautiful thing because I went from literally my first job being minimum wage. And then let's just say at the time, I think minimum wage was like maybe $10 an hour. And then when I got my first co-op opportunity, I think I was making like $20 an hour. So I was making double that. I'm curious, guys. So I started going through their job postings, their internal job postings, and for my college diploma, what pay that would get me. And I was seeing jobs for like $24, $34, $44 an hour. And that's when I'm like, okay, this is where I need to be. I'm starting to see the relation. And then I started looking at the engineers, what those positions were, and I saw those were a tier above. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, all right, I did the university thing once, but I think I gotta go back and get it because I don't want to restrain myself from the entirety of my career just because I didn't finish that degree.
Well, got you. Okay, so what was that program like? Remind me what the name of the program was that you were doing?
So it was it's a civil engineering technology diploma.
Okay.
So it's a 3-year program. So essentially college, at least in Canada, college prepares you. The whole objective is that when you go to college, you should be ready to start working immediately. So they get you prepared. You go through all your civil engineering basic courses in the first year, but then you start going into deeper specialized area in your second and third year. So I chose the municipal side as opposed to building side. And the reason I did that is because when I'm looking at the Canadian landscape, yes, there are buildings being built, but there's way more need for road infrastructure throughout Canada. So there is a greater demand for road infrastructure professionals in that area as opposed to buildings. Buildings is more unique and specialized as opposed when you're municipal, you could get into anything. So you could get into highway construction, road construction, culvert construction, bridge construction. You could do environmental aspects of things. So any environmental impacts and studies that need to get done, you could also branch off into that. So I started noticing that extremely early. And I was fortunate enough to have an older brother who's also a civil engineer. So my dad, my brother, and myself are all engineers. So my brother, he designs. So he's a designer. So within the college, you get exposure to AutoCAD Civil 3D. And that college specifically, they were advanced enough where our final project was us designing all the infrastructure for a new development, a new subdivision based on the municipality standards. So we're designing the storm sewers, the water main sewers, the sanitary sewers. We're putting things, and that literally after you finish our program, you could get hired immediately just because you have that skill. And that to me was like the benefit of college, is because now you will not only want to have the opportunity to get into co-op where you could work with the company, make money. I had friends who were continuing their last year in college and they were still working part-time, right? So you had that opportunity to get a lot more experience. And that to me set me apart from everyone else. When I later on went on to do my university degree, a lot of people didn't have experience. So right after getting graduating, I've never had a problem getting a job. Like never had a problem. Like it's actually been really good. And that has been the blessing. And the main thing a few employers told me is that they saw the 2 municipalities that I did co-op for on my resume, and that made me stand out amongst the rest.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. Like job experience is always top tier, and it's hard because it's like, well, you need the experience to get the job, and so a co-op opportunity is really great because you're kind of like everyone. Is it true that everyone has to do the job training?
No, it was optional. So there was
and it's up to you to find the job.
It's up to you. So, so what it is that there was a criteria. I think you needed a 3.0 GPA and you had completed certain courses already to get into the program. And then once you get into the program, now you have to apply and try to attain a position. Like it's not 100% confirmed that you will get a position. So you have to go through the interview process with everyone else. So like, my first interview, I went in with a suit and everything. And I saw the other guys who were just in shirts. So it's like, you want to stand out, right? And you want to leave an impact. But that set me up for like greater things than I could have ever imagined.
Nice. Okay. So you're in the job field now. So you did mention that, your family is basically all in the engineering space. Did you lean on them even maybe before that point as like mentors, or maybe do you still continue to? Do you have people that you see as mentors in your career?
Not exactly. So my brother, I would say when I'm working in the field and there is a problem that I may come across, be mindful. His design experience can translate a little bit, but when it comes to the actual, because I'm more into construction, so my job deals with the actual constructability of it, where we build their design. So essentially, I would ask him certain questions when it comes to, bro, I'm looking at this drawing and I don't understand what I'm seeing. And then he started breaking it down for me. And it's funny because my first job after college, I did work for a construction company as a construction coordinator. And they wanted me to do a simple exercise as a takeoff. So we had a wall, a retaining wall, and there was some granular material we were going to put behind that wall. And my boss at the time was like, hey, do a takeoff and tell me how much material we need behind this wall. I don't know. I don't know what a takeoff was. I just finished school. You're not even, I don't even know what I'm looking at. Like, you're showing me this drawing and I'm supposed to magically figure out what this was. And I remember I called my brother because my boss at the time was like, he was very critical of me. Like, he's like, yo, you don't know this. They didn't teach you this in school. And my brother was very upset that I was hearing these things because he's like, you don't learn this in school. He never learned that in school. So like, but because I had my brother, so like I left the job that day, went to my brother's house that evening, stayed the night, and he started showing me like, okay, this is what you're looking at, and this is how you do your calculation. And it's from that point on is when I started to realize, like, the more you look at the drawings, the more you understand it once you start to break it down. But you have to be that self-motivated to put in the time to actually look at it. People go on jobs and don't do anything, expect to learn. Like, no, you have to have that hunger. So it's from that moment on is when I realized like, yo, I could do this. Like, you think it's hard, it's really not. It takes time for you to get accustomed to that new world of like civil engineering or engineering in general.
Yeah, it's a lot of upfront learning.
Yes. Yeah,
and it's not gonna happen overnight, you know?
No, at all. And it takes some time. It's like, and the better the company you're with, the better their training. And that's what I started to learn. Like the first company I was with, I didn't know what I had to do my first year until we had winter time where work slowed down, and then they start putting us in training. And then that's when I started to realize, oh, so these are my responsibilities. Like, why did no one tell me this the last 8 months while I was out there in the field? Like, this should have been first when I got hired. But like you live and you learn and you go through experiences, and rather than just cry and sink, like you fight. Like you just keep going, you stay motivated, and you still try to learn and pick up skills. It got easier. So the reliance on my brother became a lot less because one, it becomes repetitive. Like you've seen a few drawings, you kind of see them all. Like, only a few things will change after that. And then now we have technologies where I could like just go and figure out things on my own or watch a YouTube video. It's like, okay, what is this? How to do this? What are they doing? Type situations.
Okay, I love that.
And that's like the part of engineering is like it's problem solving, right? So you're in the field, you have a problem, now you got to figure it out, and you have different things. You have contracts, you have drawings, you have specifications that you could refer to try to figure out, okay, and any decision you make, at least you have ways to validate the reason you made your decision. And that's really and truly what it's about.
Yeah, just as like a side note, but I remember, so my first job when I finished university was also in like construction management. And I remember feeling like probably the second day, just hearing the conversations of like other people in the room, like these older guys and stuff who had been doing this for years, and like them trying to figure out a situation. I'm like, nobody knows what they're doing. It's like
that's what it is.
Literally, it's like you have a problem. There are always going to be problems, and you just have to figure out what to do with it.
You got to figure it out.
That was the moment for me. I was like, wow.
You got to figure it out. And then you start to realize that guys with more experience could figure it out a lot faster because they've been in similar situations before. Right. So like I've had issues on one site and now I have a new site. I'm like, yeah, we're not doing that because that happened on my last job. And that's just what it is. Like life is just about learning and growing.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So I was actually talking with a couple of guys around our age in the industry recently, and they were describing like construction management as a very consuming job. And that's something that I can definitely relate to, especially in the bigger North American market. So what is it like for you? Like, is that something that you resonate with?
So initially, yes. So when I first started off working, I was on the contracted side. So if you're the contractor and you're building it, that's a high pressured environment. And to me personally, I feel like I could adapt to my environment. So I didn't mind it. But then when I got into the consulting side is when to me, it's way more laid back. And all the pressure is on the contractor. And now I'm just making sure the contractor is building within the city's standards or the city's specification. I'm making sure they're doing things. I'm making sure they're taking care of the public and they're being safe. So it's way less pressure on me on the consultant side. So I'm at the point, I'm like, I'm never going back on the contracting side because to me, the myth was that the contractors make way more money than the consultants. And in my experience, that's not true. I remember seeing the pay scale when I was on the contracting side, and I'm making that right now on the consulting with less years of experience. So to me, maybe the contractors may get bonuses. Maybe that's where they may be able to separate the lead from the consultants. But from what I've seen, the pay grades that I've seen, I'm like, that is a big myth. So I just personally, I'm like, look, as I'm getting older and I want more time and more flexibility and better work-life balance, I prefer the consulting side. And then you also have the municipal side. Well, in Grenada, we call it the government side. And that's not for me. That is too laid back. And the like only few people within that industry you see actually moving the ball and getting things done. And I feel like the learning slows down when you get on that side. So for me right now, where I'm at currently in my life, I like the middle. I like representing the municipality, but working with the contractor as opposed to working as a contractor.
You learn how to hack the system.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a thread with you, so we're gonna get into that.
Yeah.
So, okay, now for the meat of things, because like we talked about career, but well, actually no, before I get to that, let me stick with this a bit. So is there anything that's been like the hardest pill for you to swallow in your career? Like at any point, it could have been in the early stages or later on, just a difficult experience that you kind of had to get through.
I wouldn't say there was anything that was drastically like when I first started, like on the contracting side, I obviously questioned whether or not I could do this because in the beginning it was confusing. You're sitting meetings, you're hearing these guys discuss what's going on. I have no clue what they're talking about. And I want to say maybe the first year, maybe year and a half was the most challenging because, like, for instance, you will be in a meeting and you will hear stuff like, hey, Andre, go check the grade for this. And in my brain, I'm like, what's a grade? Like, so like, I gotta go outside, call my brother, bro. They want me to check the grade, and he's like, oh yeah, just go out there, look at it. I'm like, oh, are you talking about the dirt? Like, what's the elevation of the dirt? Like, why can't you just say dirt? Like, I don't understand. But then you start to realize when you're a professional and you're within these fields, the terminologies that they use is what's confusing. And that's true to any career aspect. Like if you hear doctors talk, if you don't understand it, you'll be confused. So it took me a while to understand, like it will take some time for you to get the terminology down because one person may refer to one thing like, a frame and grade. They may refer to it as a cover. They may refer to it as a cap. So different people refer to the same things with different names. So is when you start understanding. But then the one thing I learned is that don't be scared to ask questions. Like people will just think like, oh, people are going to think I'm stupid. Well, I'm stupid by not knowing. So I might as well ask.
Yeah, it's only up from here.
It's only up. Like, okay, I know now. I'll never ask that question again. Right. So it's just like initially, like you're kind of scared and stuff like that. And another difficult moment that I had was that I feel like my peers at the time who I was working with, they kind of viewed me as competition. So like I would be asking them like, hey, explain the process you go through to, to do an RF or RFP or an RFQ or an RFI. Like what's the process do you do? And they wouldn't show me. And that's when I realized like the company you work for really matters. The management team really matters. If you got guys who are, not feeding you information or not teaching you, then you're just going to leave yourself in a position where you just can't grow. Yeah. And when I was thankfully, the company that I'm with right now, like I have a really solid team around me. Like my management always encourages me, like, hey, get your engineering license. We need guys like you. And they're always, every year I'm eligible to get into a different type of training. All right. So they're like, oh, you want to do some type of construction type training, then the company would pay for me to do it. So it's from that where I'm just like, I need to just keep learning, keep growing, and keep moving. So the beginning was like the most difficult part. I can't even lie. So when I started getting away from that, I started getting into healthy environments. And luckily, I started off with co-op with the municipality. So I knew what a healthy work environment was from the jump. Mm-hmm. A lot of people get put into a terrible situation in the first and they think that's what it is. And I'm like, no, like it gets better than that. So if you're always stressed at work, there's always a better opportunity out, at least within our field, there's always a better opportunity out there for you.
Yeah. 100% agree. Okay. So let's switch tracks a little bit now because you somewhat recently started some entrepreneurial work, starting your own business, as we can see behind you. Yes. I like it. And so that's something I want to get into because I feel like even though, this podcast used to be focused on like careers and that past, but it's becoming very obvious that like in order to thrive in life, we need to be doing things differently. And that's like having multiple streams of income and all those hot topics that we're hearing about. So I think it's something we need to talk about more and highlight, like just how people are making work for them. And your business actually focuses on, you know, the money, personal finance and wealth building. So let's talk about that. Like what is it that you do in your business? How and why did you start?
So I'll give you the how and why I started. So you've heard all the schooling that I've done, and that was not financed through my parents. That was not financed through anything else other than loans. So at the end of all my years of school, and I ended with a roughly around 70,000 Canadian dollars of student debt. And in the beginning, I never used to even check my loan balances. I just used to know my money got in my account. I pay my tuition, I pay my rent, and then I'll figure out the rest. And it was only when I was finished and I was talking to my brother, I'm like, hey, when I finished college, actually, I was talking to my brother. I was like, you know, I'm thinking about purchasing a property. He's like, okay, well, go to the bank and, you know, see what you could qualify for. And I went to the bank and they're like, you have too much debt in order for you to be able to get a property. And this is like 2016-ish, 2016, 2017, or around that time. So I'm like, all right, well, you know, I'm going to university, got my engineering degree after my diploma, racked up a little bit more debt. Now, be mindful, I did work for that year, so it wasn't as bad. I was able to save. And when I finished, I had $70,000 of debt. And I was low-key depressed. I can't even lie. I was like, how am I going to get out of this situation? Like, how am I going to pay this off? Yeah, let's say if I'm making $60,000 on paper, after tax is more like 48. I still have rent to pay. So from the beginning, I came across this financial guy named Dave Ramsey. And I don't agree with all Dave Ramsey's philosophies, but I do agree with his paying off debt strategy. And he's like, look, if you got debt, you're broke. You got no money. So he introduced me to different types of debt repayment strategies. My personal favorite was the snowball effect, means you do the minimum payouts on all your debt, but you attack the smallest one the fastest. And it was more of a mental thing. It's like once you finish the smallest one, you feel better, you're going to attack the other. So from that, paid off a lot of debt. And in 2020, I just finished university. I got my first engineering job as a designer, very happy. And I started in it started in March of 2020, and then the pandemic happened. So I got sent home temporarily, stayed home for 2 months, and then I got introduced into the world of stocks. So in my brain, I already know how to handle debt. I'm like, now I need to learn how to attain assets. And I was aware of the stock market before, but I never really understood it. So during the pandemic time, 2020, when things were so down, I started learning and I just started buying books, courses, watching videos. Like I literally dedicated like so much time and learning into it that I tell people, if you take all the years of studying that I did for university and you take the amount of time I put into studying the stock market, I actually study more hours in the stock market trying to understand it than I did university. And people think I'm lying. I'm like, you don't know how addicted. Because I'm like, it clearly works. I just need to understand how. So from that, I started, doing way more research, and you start to notice that the people who are in the top 10% or the top 1%, what are they doing different from everyone else? And they're collecting assets. And it's not just real estate, it's stocks, it's bonds, it's so many different other type of assets out there that you could collect. So that's when I just started getting really involved and started understanding the stock market more, just the S&P 500. But then as time grew on, so that was 2020. So by 2022, 2 years later, I started understanding how to evaluate companies. And that was another skill that I picked up. So how to look at a company, how to look at their finances, how to look at what their competitive advantage is, how to look at how their business fits the economy that we're living in today. So once I started learning that to me was like the game changer, where I'm like, this is unbelievable. Like, this is valuable information that I've just continued to learn and I'm still learning. And I'm like, you know what? I know enough at this point where I could start teaching it to others. And that's where I started posting social media clips where it's like in 2022, I started telling people, these are the companies that I'm buying. This is what I'm doing right now. And I try to give brief notes as to why I'm doing what I'm doing and what I'm seeing. And so far, all my investments are doing really well.
Yeah.
Really well. So I'm on that path where I'm just like, I just want people to understand, like, you don't have to just rely on your 9 to 5. I've actually worked with someone personally in one of my last projects, and he's working for a different company, but he showed me that, hey, Andre, I bought these 2 houses back in, I think it was like 2014 for 300,000, and he just sold one for 1.3 million, and he sold the other for 1 point something million, and he just paid off his house, and he works a 9 to 5, doesn't do anything else. So I'm like, if he could do it, why can't I? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I know house prices aren't where they were before, but if we're seeing the trend, we see they're going to continue going up. So I'm just like, I need to be able to collect as much assets for myself, help my family out, help my friends out, and just help as much people as I possibly can.
Okay. So you mentioned, you mentioned that you had learned so much that you felt like you were then able to share with others. And so that's when you started the business. But was that an intentional shift? Like, were you ever like, I want to start a business? Like, what can I use? What information do I have that I can use? Or was it just kind of one thing led to the next? And you're like, hey, let me pass this on.
So I'm going to be honest. So the real reason I started is because, I had a friend, and when I started learning about stocks, I reached out to this person. I'm like, hey, like, this is what the stuff that I'm learning. Are you interested in stocks? And they said to me, yeah, I bought a bunch of stocks already, like when the market had fallen due to the pandemic. And it's just like, I'll be honest with you, because this person was very close to me. I'm just like, why wouldn't you share that with me? Just as the same way I'm learning right now, I'm sharing it with you. Why wouldn't you tell me about this opportunity? And it's like, that's just sometimes how people are. Like, people just will keep things to themselves rather than share with others. And to me, that, like, no one benefits from that other than you. And what's the point of you being on a different level compared to everyone else? So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to learn so much about this stock market thing, but I'm going to teach everyone else, just so that if you are interested and you do get involved and you get the value and the benefit from it, then at least I was able to impact one person's life or one family's life, or 10 families. Like, that was just the thing. I'm just like, I just want to be able to impact one person, because from my research and from all the books that I've read, what I've noticed is that once you start, it's hard to stop. Because once you see the results, it's hard to stop, because it's just a proven asset. So from that, I'm like, if I could impact one family to 10 family to 100, then I am doing everyone justice. I'm doing myself justice, because I'm no longer keeping that information to myself, but I'm also helping others be able to attain more in life. And we could see, like, if I had known better when I was working co-op, when I was doing all these different things coming up, instead of me just blowing my money and wasting it on consumer items, phones, shoes, tablets, PlayStations, I would have been buying stocks, and my life would just be in a whole different scenario where I could have used my stocks back then to purchase the house that I'm in right now, rather than having to go through this whole thing. So it was just a matter of, like, I want people to feel empowered. I just feel like so many of us are just going through life without really any type of, guidance and any type of hope. And I'm just like, there is real hope out there. There's real chances for you to change your life, but you got to be able and willing to do it and get the work done and just be patient. Like that's the most important. And I think the pandemic taught me how to be patient because I was a very impatient person. But the pandemic is like, no, sit your butt home, do nothing. And it forced me, it honestly forced me. So I'm like, you know what? Everyone's focusing on the now as opposed to the 3 years from now, the 5 years from now, the 10 years from now. And then that's when I realized like I got to start thinking once again, engineering, I have a problem. How do I solve it? I had to start thinking long term. I'm already thinking what I'm going to do in the next 10, 15, 20 years. Like, so that's where I started to really put that information out there because I'm like, so many of us just don't know about it. It's just the lack of knowledge. I'm like, okay, well, there's one person here who has taken the time and it, like I was reading so much books to the point where it was getting repetitive when I'm like, oh, well, I know this. Oh, I know this. This is basic information. So what's basic information to me is not basic information to everyone else. So that really drive me to start like putting out content out there as say, hey guys, the stock market is a real asset that you could acquire and one of the easiest accessible assets you could acquire because it only takes like $10 for you to start.
So true. So what has that process been like for you, like turning this knowledge into a business, and what do you offer? What services do you offer?
So it's been difficult because to me, like in my brain, the way I envision it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to come up with all this great information. It's all solid. I'm showing everyone this is public information. And I just thought it will just spread like wildfire and pick up.
Mm.
Maybe if I had started during the hype in 2021, where like everybody was a financial guru, maybe things would have been different, but I didn't know enough then to be able to share. When I started sharing is when I realized like the market was given great opportunities was in 2022. The market went down for pretty much the entire year that year. And if you know as an investor, you want to buy low and then sell high. So when the prices were going down, I was buying. I couldn't stop buying. I had any money I could get. I was buying a bunch of stocks because I realized the opportunity that I was being presented. So converting that to business, so some of the service that I offer right now is I do one-on-one consults to help people just get started. What we do is almost similar to the bank. So if you go to a bank and they want to invest your money, they find out a few things about you. What's your age? What's your goals? That's very important. And what's your risk tolerance? Are you high risk taker, medium, and low? And then I found different tools online that I use to help people be like, okay, so this is it. You're not that much of a risk taker. So these are the products that I would recommend. These are the investments that I will start you off with. For every beginner, you should really just be looking at what we call exchange traded funds, ETFs. So instead of picking one singular company, you're buying one thing that contains several companies. So it's basically like you own a basket of stocks, a basket of different companies. That helps with the risk mitigation of investing. So a lot of people just hear risk and they get scared. But there's a difference between speculative risk, where hey, this thing could turn into 10,000% return, and there's a difference between calculated risk. Hey, this thing has been proven for several decades that it continuously goes up because it's based on the consumer spending. That's all it is. So once I try to break that down as simple as possible. Like I said earlier, when you get into a new field, like the financial field, when you hear certain terminologies and lingo, it becomes intimidating. You get scared. And I see that with so many of my clients. So I try to break it down as best as possible. Be like, no, it's not scary. You just take some time for you to get used to it. So I also do that. Right now we have basically a group membership open for anyone. But we're kind of trying to target the Caribbean audience. We started with Grenadians, where I know a few Grenadians who have money on the side and they're like, hey, I don't even know what to do with this money. So we're trying to help them understand like, hey, you could open your own brokerage account, and that's what you need in order to be invested in the stock market. And we're showing them the different ways that, hey, you could actually own companies like Apple, Walmart, Costco, Amazon. There's different ways for you to be able to own those singular companies, or like I said, you could buy the ETFs that contain all those companies, and then as you know, watch your money grow over time.
Yeah. And I know, well, I had Christy on here last season that you know of. And that's something that she's been talking about too a lot. Like, how do you invest from the Caribbean? Because it's a big block, mental block, mostly to most people. Because it's like, well, I'm here. Like, how do I, I don't have access to the US stock market. But you are saying that there are ways that you can access that
100%.
from wherever you are.
Yeah, 100%. And it's shout out to Chrissy because she's the person who started posting her investing journey on Instagram that got me intrigued. Because in my brain, I'm like, you need like $20,000 to start. And she showed like, nah, you could start with like less. You could start with 500. You could start with 1,000. And I watched her grow her account. I'm like, I can't sit on the sidelines and not do anything. So I started learning the basics just like her. I would say I think I went a lot deeper, to be honest. I would throw out that resource right now. So there is a YouTube series called the Come Up series, and it's free. And that's the best part of my journey is that there's stuff I paid for, but the most important information I learned about these companies was from the Come Up series. And the Come Up series is hosted by his name is Mark Monroe. Mark Monroe is a guy who created startup companies, and I think he sold a few. And his grandfather taught him how to invest and how to trade in the stock market. Now, nobody here as a beginner should be trading. All we think about is long-term investing, not trading. But however, because of Mark's background, what he did through the pandemic was just give out free information as to how you could start evaluating companies and how you understand the economy. A lot of people don't realize the stock market is directly linked to the US economy. So when I started understanding the economy and how that works, like how when interest rates are low, when interest rates are high, what does that do to the asset values? That changed everything for me. I started understanding things so much different. And I was not someone who was good at economics in PVC. Now there's very little things that I understand about the economy. Like I fully grasp, or I have a better understanding about the economy and how that works. And once you can start putting the two together, it really and truly changes your life.
Yeah.
You have less fear when you understand that. So when it comes to investing, it's like, okay, I'm not scared of investing anymore. I could go full throttle now.
I love that. So people who are listening, like all this information that you got just in the last 5 minutes, imagine like an hour with Andre.
No, we drop gems.
Yeah.
All I do is drop gems. Like I have Grenadians right now who they're shy. They don't want to say it. And I agree. I'm like, okay, you want to wait a year of investing, then you want to talk about your results, then cool. I have no problem with that. And that's how you have to look at it. Things are not quick. Like it takes a year, it takes 2 years for things to start moving. But I got people right now who are doing really well, and I'm happy because they like started executing. And the thing is, I just try to present information to you, and if it makes sense to you, then it's up to you whether or not you want to act on it.
So true. So you mentioned, well, it's from the way that the conversation has been going, I kind of picked up that you're like a forward thinker in general. And you mentioned, like, I was going to ask about the next 5 years, but you mentioned like you're already looking 15, 20 years out. So what does your future look like to you? Career-wise, business-wise, money-wise? I don't know.
So essentially, like from an early stage, I've hit my income goal. Like I thought I would have to work 10 years for. I've already hit that.
Nice.
So now I have new goals that I've set for myself. Right now, my current position is what we call contract administrator. And it's basically like a junior project manager for consultant. So next up, I want to become a project manager. My boss is very well aware of this. Eventually, I think I'll be interested in a director position within the contract administrator side. So that's essentially what I'm looking at career-wise, because I understand where the pay bands are for that, and that's, I think, ideally where I would like to be. I'm someone who I don't see myself working forever, but at the same time, I don't mind my job. Like I actually enjoy what I do as long as I'm still learning and as long as I could keep growing. I don't mind working. But essentially I would like to, be able to live off my investments. That's my main goal. I want to be able to, have my stocks grow substantially and then also have certain stocks that pay me on a monthly or quarterly basis that will make a big impact on my life. And I'm very entrepreneurial, and I've realized that as much as I'm an engineer, my soul, I'm an entrepreneur, and it took me a long time to realize that. So I had the mental capacity to understand engineering. However, I have a real desire to be an entrepreneur. So in the next 10, 15, 20 years, I would love to be back in Grenada. You know, and running a couple businesses and hopefully being able to sustain that. And that will be ideal for myself. I would like if it's a lot sooner than 10, 15 years. But right now I got so many things going on up here that I got to figure out, how I'm going to get to that point. And that's going to be the most difficult part, is figuring out how you get there. Because there's no real blueprint as to how to get things done or how to succeed. You just got to keep trying and trying and trying until you get to your goals.
Problem solving.
Goes back to the core of it all. It's just and that's the most important part, is like, I try different things, it doesn't work. I try this, it doesn't work, but then I just know at some point something will hit and I'll be able to accelerate my goals accordingly.
Nice. Do you see yourself as like one of the fire people who even if you're going to continue to work, you have like a number in mind investment wise that you're trying to hit so that you can live off your investments?
So my number, and I'll share it, I've never shared this with anyone before.
Okay.
My number is 20 million. That is my number. If I have assets worth 20 mil, then I don't have to work again, right? And ideally, I would like to set up businesses that it could just operate themselves. I want to be able to get back my time and spend way more time with my family and continue to, see my son's growth. And if God blesses me with more kids, and I'm looking forward to that. So I'm trying to put in as much work right now so that I could be able to, have a lot of more free time in the future.
Yeah.
So that is my number. It sounds crazy because my number was actually, I think it was 5 million. And then as I started to learn more, I started to realize, as life gets more expensive.
Inflation,
Inflation's real. And people think it doesn't affect them, but it does. So I'm like, you know what? Whatever my number is, I'm gonna times it by 4. And that's the goal. That's really the goal, because I think once I have 20 million worth of assets, then I don't have to think about money again. It's no longer a problem, and that's where I want to be. And it's not just for my own consumption. I'm not just here oh, I just want to buy, because once you start becoming an investor, you realize you want to buy less stuff actually, right? You don't want to spend as much. You want to find more deals. People call it cheap, frugal, whatever it is. To me, it's being money smart. So you start to realize I want to be able to do that, because for instance, and I shared this on my story on Instagram the other day, it's when the hurricane had hit Carriacou, it was yeah, I could donate right now, which obviously we will and we do, but my donation right now to me doesn't impact the family's life the way I want it to impact them. I want to be able to be you know what, here's $5,000, here's $10,000 that it won't get rid of all your problems that you just incurred, but at least it's a start. And to me, that would just be more impactful. I want to be in that position where I could help and I could give. And that's where I'm let me learn what I can up here and figure out a way. And that's why my goal is to go back home, because I want to be able to come back home and not contribute to brain drain. I want to be able to come back home and give more and do what I can. And I have a niche in the stock market. I feel like I have something that's really valuable, and if it continues to grow and if it continues to do well, then I can not only help other people who are investing right now, but then let my investments help others in the future.
Sure. I want to highlight what you mentioned about like the money and being able to give back, because I follow like a few financial minded people, mostly women, women of color too. And we have this idea, especially in, I think, the Black community globally, and especially in the Caribbean in Grenada, that like money is bad. And having a lot of money, having a lot of money is gonna like make you turn into a bad person or, you know, do bad things. And just like that idea, which I've heard a lot of other people who now have money, like say that like having money, at least for people who are already, you know, like positive, have positive mindsets, is only a benefit to like the entire community, because you are already kind of benevolent, I guess, in wanting to share and wanting to give back to your community. And so having more money is only going to make you be able to do that more on a bigger scale.
Easily.
And it's going to positively impact like so many families and communities around you, because then they're learning and they're able to build and grow and give back as well.
Easily.
So we really have to like remove that mindset that like having money is bad, because then we don't even strive for it, you know?
Yeah, it's like, oh, I could live without it if, you know, this, and that's like, and this is why I don't, I know it's a little bit of a controversial topic, but like people be like, I hate billionaires. Billionaires shouldn't exist. But I'm like, just think about what you're saying. So for instance, let's use the Walmart family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Walmart, they're billionaires. But Walmart employs what, 1 million, 2 million people? So that's 2 million families that have a job, that have income, because these people are technically billionaires. So it's like, it's not all bad. Like, you can't look at it that way. They're able to be billionaires because they took a risk. And they're now setting up, now, whether they're doing shady business or not, that's a whole different conversation. But ideally, they're employing people. And that's how the stock market works, is that because you have these big corporations that are making billions of dollars every month or every 3 months. And now you get an opportunity to get a portion of that through investing. That's how the stock market works. So like you said, if you have the mentality that money is bad, then that's how you're going to see the stock market as a bad thing. It's like, oh no, it doesn't work. No, it does. It historically has proven it. So I try to encourage folks to like not listen too much of the noise. And there's a lot of noise out there, and a lot of people take in all the noise. However, just focus on you and focus on how you can improve your life, because like you said, if I'm able to, you know, if I know this month I'm gonna get a paycheck for $6,000 that I'm going to do nothing with right now, I could help a family with that. And once you start developing community and start developing that type of mindset where it's like, hey, you don't have to just work one job, or you don't have to work a job to be able to make it, because you cannot save for a house anymore. It's almost impossible. The cost of material is through the roof compared to what it was 10, 15 years ago. You cannot save to for just a tuition. It's very hard to do that unless, you know, you have zero expenses, or you live at home and you make a good bit of money. But very few people are in that position. So it's like there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there. We're trying to debunk it one after the other. But to me, the only way I could do it is if I help others. I'm like, you know what? I could grow my portfolio. Let me help others build theirs. And if once I could do that, then I just think it's going to just spread it like wildfire. Hopefully, that's the goal.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so if you could go back in time, what is a piece of advice that you would give to your, let's say, 15 to 18-year-old selves?
Ooh, oh boy, that's a okay. So if I could talk to my 15 or 18-year-old self, what I would say is don't rush into university. Don't just rush to get a degree. Do your research. Work after, like, for instance, TAM CC, I would have preferred if I worked for a year or two, save some money, and try to avoid as much student debt as possible. That would be the first thing. Second thing, if you're in school, especially college or university, attend as much career fairs as possible. If there's a career fair in there, go with your resume, go with your cover letter, take cards, send emails, send follow-up emails to your first email if they didn't respond to you. Be intentional with what you want. Don't take things personal if you don't get a response. There's hundreds of companies out there that you could potentially work for. And also focus on the things that you are interested in. Even if it's not like, oh my God, this is my passion. A lot of people think it has to be their passion for them to have a career, and that's not true. It's just something that you're interested in, because once you're interested, then you'll put in the time, and then hopefully it's a lucrative career and you could be successful off of it. So I know a lot of friends who they were going to class and they were just not going to any of the career fairs. And I went to every single career, even if it's not for my program, I went just to see who was there. And that always kept me employed. Even after the pandemic getting laid off, like being off for 2 months was my choice, because I'm like, the government's giving us $2,000 to stay home. Let me just stay home for for 2 months. And I'm like, all right, I'm bored. So let me get back to work. And I started applying and I got a job right afterwards. So you want to help yourself be as employable as possible. Start networking. Networking is so huge. And, just sending emails, taking emails, trying to discuss things, and you never know who could help you get to where you need to be. And start investing. The sooner you start investing, I'm telling you right now, if I had known now what that I known then, my life will be a lot better than what it is. And not to say my life is terrible right now, but I could have been in a better position. I could have had way more assets. I could have been closer to that $20 million goal that I have, if I had, not had to pay off $50,000 or $60,000, $70,000 with the student debt. Like, there's so many different things I could have done with my money while I was working, rather than buying parts from my car, radio, just wasting my money away. Like, I should have been more intentional with my money. I start budgeting. If you know how to budget, then you are ahead of half the pack. And I think that's about it. And try to get scholarships if you can, and bursaries. Apply for those and that's something I started doing later on, which I kind of regret. I should have spent more time applying to bursaries. Because then I started getting around them $500, $1,000 that helped pay for my rent and all that other stuff. But that stuff I started doing later because I was just, I was ignoring it. I was kind of lazy when I was a student. But from that, I'm just like, I'm trying to implement all these things right now to my son. So I started investing for him already. And, as he gets older, I'm going to start, trying to give him the little tips and tricks so that he also could advance his life and wherever he wants to go.
That's some solid advice. I hope y'all are listening. But I think the best thing is, like, yeah, we said for your 15 to 18-year-old self, but like that advice applies to anyone at any age. Like, you can be 40 and it's not too late to start.
No, it's not. And that's the thing. And it hurts me because, like, when it comes with money, people are very emotional. So I don't like to force things on you. All I could do is show you what I'm doing so you could see that it works. And hopefully I could provide you with the information so that once you see that information, that you'll be like, you know what, this guy might be onto something. Let me see if it works. And then once you start the process and you see the process work for you, then it changes. Like my siblings, I didn't force them to do anything. I screenshot all my accounts. When it was up, when it was down, I just screenshot it and I sent it in the group. And then when it was down for quite some time, and then when it started going up and going crazy, that's when they started their journey. And I'm like, that's all I could ask for, is for you guys just to trust the process and let's get it moving.
I love that. All right. So, Andre, if there are people listening who, now their interest is piqued and they're like, I want to know more. I want to reach out to this guy. Like, tell me how I make some money too. How do they reach out to you? Or if they want to learn about engineering, how can they find you?
That's true. So on Instagram, I'm Dre, you can see right here, DREINC _473. Or if you just type in Dre Money Mind Resources, you should be able to find me. on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook also, Andre Glean. So those are the main two places where you could contact me. And I'm always a DM away. I'm always open to helping anyone, having a conversation, talking about money, talking about assets. That's something I live for. I truly, truly enjoy it. It was a hobby. Now it's a passion. And now I'm trying to build it into a business. So that is something, just reach out to me, and I'm a wide open book. I tell it all, I show it all, and I try to help people get to where they want to get to.
Awesome. And we're going to share all that information in the show notes so you can find Andre and reach out to him. This has been a really good conversation, like wide ranging, but I feel like it could definitely help some people out there. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me once again, Arlie.
No problem. And to the listeners, thank you for joining us on today's Pathway. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to leave a comment wherever you found us today and let us know what you think about this episode. If you liked this one, I think you might like this next one even more. Go check it out and let me know.